Hey, and welcome everyone. Today our billion strategy guide to buildings, units, and defense. Now in this guide I will go over how and when to use some units and defense in general, and on top of that I will throw in tips, hints that will hopefully help you guys out in your future games. So we're gonna start from the structures. So when you create your buildings, you should generally try to leave gaps between them every now and then. This is a good practice because if one building gets destroyed by any chance, then you'll at least have some room to recover with extra walls, for example. To a lot of you people, this may seem as a very normal thing, but try to avoid building over grassland. I've seen a lot of people do that, and you should really try not to, as that will destroy some of your food that you're gonna need later on. Same goes for the surrounding stone and iron area. Try not to block them with other buildings. Leave a bit of space there so you could get some extra if you need. When expanding your base, leave slightly bigger gaps between buildings every now and then. That way you give yourself the room for the error. As I already mentioned earlier, if one of your defense collapses, you'll get the extra time to build the walls. Don't forget to use marketplace to buff your houses, so the food consumption would not be that high. This will also lower the amount of food you'll need to build. One of the most important buildings, in my opinion, in the game is the warehouse. Now, the warehouse needs to be planned ahead. Where to build it? It requires a 4x4 square. So pick a spot that covers most of your farms and as many other income buildings as possible. In this game, there are some of the buildings such as advanced mills, which I want you to be extremely careful with. They are rather expensive, although giving you double the specific income, but they cost up to they cost up to 5 times than your regular version of that. You should only use the advanced when you don't have more space, or generally when you don't have more space. That's when you should upgrade them, or you need to have enough income for that. As long as you still have the space and your income is rather, let's say, average, stick to the regular version of any building. Also, remember that banks and other type of buff buildings do not stack. They only affect one building once with the percentage. So having 2 banks right next to, let's say, a group of your houses does not work. Only one of them would apply the effect. Okay, as a last hint, and which I find the most important in this section, to be honest, and I also mentioned some of it as well already. Try not to stack your buildings. This may become a serious problem when you're moving, even when you're moving your units around. Not to talk about when one of your buildings gets destroyed, which just gives you this chain reaction that destroys everything. So try not to stack up too much. I know some of the maps are nearly impossible not to stack the buildings, but at least try to leave some gaps every now and then. Like try to leave like a 4x4 or some kind of squares between, so you still have the room for the error to build more defense. And in general, just try to plan ahead all the buildings such as banks, markets, warehouse. These are rather important, and when you have the big chunk of, let's say, housing area, you should find a spot that you don't build for a moment and leave that 3x3 just for the bank or for the market, so it would cover a large area. So you don't need to build 2 of them, let's say. So yeah, there you go. Now we're heading into unit. Now many of you may or may not agree with this unit guide, as everyone sees things different, remember that. But I will do my best to cover as much as possible. Now, since there are not that many units available in this game right now, your only starter unit will be a ranger. But they are great to start with and make very few sound, as they should. Now, sound in the game, everything makes sound. Soldiers make sound, snipers make sound. For those of you that don't know what the sound effect is or how it works, every unit has a sound kind of meter, and Rangers have the least of that. So whenever they shoot, for example, they barely make any noise. Unless you group them together, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, ranges are safe for clearing at the start of the game, and they don't attract as many zombies. So let's say you would be clearing with soldiers, you could attract way too many attention and then be in a serious trouble. Since ranges upkeep is very low, you can just produce a lot of them at the start of the game. You can even use them instead of ballistas, because one ballista's upkeep is 15 ranges, and that's a lot. So if I was to give you any advice, try to use just as many ranges as possible, so you would clear out your surrounding area faster as well. Soldiers are also great units, but they produce a lot of sound, which will attract zombies from very far away actually. So you should be very careful when you use them, especially playing higher difficulties. I would recommend not. However, they have a short distance, so they will struggle against spitters quite a bit. You'll probably need to micromanage your soldiers if you really want to clear the map with them. So for that reason, I would still recommend using snipers for clearing map. And this brings us to the snipers, guys, which are the best mid game and early game units, because they are by far the most effective way to clear the map combined with the archers. And even just alone, they are just by far the best. You can also place them in towers later, which will give them even further range and counters the spitters with. Okay guys, so your final mix of units is really up to you. I can only give you a little bit of an advice to combine them with tornadoes, soldiers, and snipers. Tornadoes will deal with the AoE and clear the starting pack near the wall, while the snipers are a great add-on in the towers to deal with all the spitters that the tornadoes may not actually reach. So you definitely want to make sure that you have the snipers sitting in the towers. That will give them extra range, and possibly they will kill nearly all of the spitters that you typically would not be able to reach. But yeah, there you go. So there's that. As you may have noticed one thing, I really didn't mention the Titans. Now, Titans are very expensive units. They are the most expensive units in the game. First of all, getting to the research is already 6,000, which is a lot. We can all agree that it's a lot. Also, one unit is 2,000 gold. So to produce one Titan, you would possibly need at least 2,000 income, which again is actually rather hard to pull off, especially when it comes to higher difficulties. So, and also on top of that, they act the same way as executors. Well, executors are really the same as Titans, but they are way less expensive. Researching them is only 3,000 gold, and one of them is 1,200 gold to build. So they are basically twice less expensive. So yeah, there you go. So if I was you guys, always pick executors over Titans in any kind of case. You can have fun with the Titans whenever you want, when you play like a lower difficulty or something. But other than that, I find them not very useful. So let's now head into the defense strategy. I bet this section is going to interest people the most, as it is the main part of surviving the game. So let's start from the very basic, the wall, which is widely used, or the most used thing in the game, and is the most important part of your early game defense, mid game defense, and your late game defense. You can utilize in many different ways. You can wall off sections that have small tunnel areas, which will help you delay possible threats and give you the time to get some units to that point. You can also use walls next to some buildings at the start of the game that you place near the walls or tree areas. So why? Zombies move around the very edges of the things such as walls and forests. Now, to prevent those ninja zombies from infesting your nice colony, you can build 1 or 2 walls right next to your building, so they would attack that one first, because there's a lot of cases where you don't have the time to keep an eye on every building on your map, especially at the start of the game. So that little tiny wall or 2 walls that you build right next to that building can be a lifesaver and a very big factor. Now, in the later stages of the game, Stone walls will become your most common friend. You'll be using them a lot. You'll cover all your defense, or most of your defense will consist just from stone walls, pretty much. So yeah, there you go. So that's it with the walls, guys. Ballistas. Let's get to the actual towers now. And start off with the ballista. They're the most widely used defense in the game. They are a little bit expensive, but you can use them to quickly cover, you know, those little tunnel areas, or what people like to call the choke points. They also provide you a very nice AoE attack and are generally perfect against any kind of random raids that you may encounter throughout the game, and give you the space to just use your units for clearing the map and having them elsewhere instead of defending those other points in your defense. Later you can upgrade ballistas also into executioners, which is fantastic because, again, you won't need to use the titans, but you already have like a pre-made executioner ready to go. Okay guys, so shock towers. Now, shock towers are amazing, but only in the middle of the game, and here's why. It is very difficult to get the use out of the shock towers later on because of the amount of spitters that comes along with those raids. And the spitters will... There's a very big chance that the spitters will disable the shock tower near your wall. Your best use case with a shock tower is by creating 3 to 5 layers of extra wall in front of it, and by only having a very small radius of that touch the outer edge of the wall. By doing so, the tower will be slightly more safer against spitters, but still there's a chance that it will get disabled. Your, so to speak, perfect defense would possibly consist of a couple of executioners on each side, while being supported with 1 or 2 shock towers. You should get, as I already mentioned, at least 3 to 5 layers of stone wall. At least. Between the walls, you can choose to have some traps like fence traps or the spike traps. This is up to you. You may have them or you may not. I need to be honest here though, I haven't found the traps being very effective. And in the back, well, you guessed it, tornadoes. As we already mentioned, this is your friend. This is your biggest friend in this game. It's tornadoes. Their AoEs is fantastic, and they will be the main source of your damage. Titans. Well, as I already mentioned, you don't really need titans since you already have executioners, which are amazing, and having a couple of executioners is already enough. I don't see a reason why you should really have the titans mixed up with all that crap. Yeah, so Shade, hey, why didn't you cover Lucifers? Well, I've not found a way to properly use them so far in this game, since their range is very small, and also they get eaten by spitters just because of the range, of course. And guess what? They also kill your own units. So maneuvering them around and placing them in positions where they wouldn't attack your own guys is really hard. So later when you want to move your units around, then you need to start being extremely careful where you place the Lucifer. For that reason, I just don't find them being effective enough in the game to have any kind of use case for them. Do let me know if you guys have found one, but for me, it's a no-go unit in this game, sort of. Alright guys, so I think that's about it. I really hope some of it is useful and you find tips and generic ideas here that you can apply to your game style. And yeah, remember to check the description below, guys. There's a Discord link. If you won't have any questions or something, that is your best bet to reach me over there. I'm really active and I'd love for the community to grow as well. So in general, I just love having you all around, okay? So same applies to the Twitch, if that's your thing, of course. I stream nearly every day, so feel free to follow me there as well. Anyhow, guys, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.